Always great to catch up with the Hall of Famer, Al Bernstein, who will be in Turning Stone this weekend for Showtime's boxing, but he's kind enough to join us for a couple moments on a Wednesday. How you been, Al?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing real well and appreciate a couple moments as always, and we'll certainly get into the Showtime card in a couple moments, but your first reaction when you heard of the passing of Muhammad Ali?
Well, it was, I had talked to his daughter, Rashida Ali, just before that here in Las Vegas, and this was before he really took a turn, so it was a surprise to me when I heard that, and then it was just, it's distressing because you get a flood of memories that come back to you, and he's such an iconic figure, and it was also in personal experiences with him, a very funny, interesting man.
The one thing that's when someone who, and look, he's a transcendent athlete and figure and person. I kind of equated it yesterday. You had Babe Ruth, the first 50, and now you had Muhammad Ali. Just the faces of American history when you start talking about just a guy that can walk down the street that everyone knew and gravitated towards. And I know it's unfortunate he'll have the detractors come out. We know the backstory with him. He was a good-looking guy. Look, a lot of athletes were womanizers. That's not the issue. From a boxing standpoint, and what he was able to do from a social sense, and a social sense of the word, Al, I don't think we're ever going to see it again. And I think we forget, look, you're talking about a guy that lost, 3 years of his prime. Can you imagine if he would have had those 3 years and what that really would have meant? I don't think it would have transformed any more of the history of boxing, but when it was all said and done, I mean, you can argue whether he's top 1, 2, 3, 4 heavyweights that we've ever seen. Flat out, the guy fought everyone that he was supposed to fight. You can't dispute that. No one can argue that, and I think that's what made him special.
Well, you mentioned, the two, you talk about everybody knew who Babe Ruth was for the first 50 years of that century, and everybody knew who Muhammad Ali was for the last 50 years and since then. And that's that kind of gets to the core of it. You kind of almost judge how the effect people had globally by how their death is treated, and Muhammad Ali's passing has engendered so much of an outpouring of not just media attention, but reaction from people in general. And nowadays, because of social media, we get to sample how people are truly feeling. We could only guess at that before, but now with Twitter and Facebook and all the rest, we actually know what people are thinking. So it's his impact on both sports and the United States as a whole was dramatic, and that's that explains it. And as an athlete, he was extraordinary. And you can. Do I think he was the greatest fighter of all time? No, I actually don't. I think Sugar Ray Robinson was, and that was his idol, Sugar Ray Robinson.
Of course.
But it doesn't, that's, so when you say he's the greatest in terms of the impact on the sport, and he clearly was a phenomenal athlete who brought skills to the heavyweight division that we'd never seen before.
Listen, I agree 100%, and people can argue, well, Joe Louis was the top-ranked heavyweight of it all time, maybe Jack Johnson, maybe Rocky Marciano. It's all subjective. It's great bar talk fodder, so to speak. Again, a couple minutes with Al Bernstein, Rich Quinones here. A couple more on Ali, and then we'll get to the card this weekend. I was going back, and I was looking at all the old footage, and you watch all the old fights again, and what one fight in your eyes defines his career?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe the Foreman fight. You have to look at it two. I'll do it two ways. I'll say early in his career when he was a mover and he was, so much when he had all that speed and all the rest of it. The fight, ironically, that I think would define his career was his fight with Cleveland Williams, of all people, because he showed the dazzling speed, the complete domination, and then that night you looked at him and said, "Oh my God, how's anyone going to beat this young man with all this speed?" then in the later parts of his career, it would probably be the Foreman fight, because that was when he reinvented himself and became this fighter who could outthink a very big opponent and win. Unfortunately, that the strategy he employed that night and would employ the rest of his career was detrimental to him. I watched the Thrill in Manila, which was, to me, one of the great fights of all time. And by the way, his rivalry with Joe Frazier, in my opinion, is the greatest rivalry ever in sports. And I watched that Thrill in Manila fight, and honestly, the punishment he took that night from Joe Frazier was outrageous. I mean, truly outrageous. And so, all that had an impact on him. But, at the end of the day, it was his ticket to winning fights.
No, you're absolutely right. Again, I know we got a couple more minutes. Let's move on to the Showtime card this weekend. Verona, New York, always a great venue. I mean, this is the stack card again. We got Molina, we got Andrade versus Nelson. You've got Willie Monroe, John Thompson, a Jersey Kid. I mean, how about the overall handicap this card for us going into the weekend? What's your thoughts? What bouts stick out? Yeah,
it should be fun. Well, you mentioned Andrade and Willie Nelson. That's a very good fight. Willie Nelson's an interesting fighter at 154 who has always been right there, ready to become a player at 154, and has really good wins. He's looked very good in fights, and then something happens to set him back. Well, this is a big opportunity for him with a good audience watching him. And for Demetrius Andrade, he is still undefeated, had a championship, doesn't have it anymore, and yet finds himself kind of looking in the 154-pound division. And this is for the winner of this will get a world title shot. So very important fight for Andrade. With all his success, he's one loss. You could look at it this way. He's one loss away from things kind of slipping away right now. So a very important fight for him, and I think that'll be a very entertaining match. And I think our main event with John Molina and Ruslan Provodnikov should certainly be exciting, because both of them, they don't know the words going backwards, and they will stand in the center of the ring and trade.
I kind of look at this fight for Nelson where a crossroads fight. He's 29 years of age, and you mentioned something happens when he absorbs those losses. He's rebounded. He's won 2 straight since his last loss, so he does rebound. You like that? That's a good mark of a fighter. But you're also looking at the age. Yes, I get it. He's in a good division where he's going to be very competitive. But you're going against a fighter in Andrade who he's technically sound. I mean, I watch this kid a lot and doesn't waste punches, smart fighter, technically sound, possesses some knockout power. So if I'm Willie Nelson, to me, I'm looking at this fight where career defining, you can kind of put away if people think, all right, you're that great fighter who's not ready to take the next step. If you have a good showing and you get a big win, then all of a sudden I think people are going to look at him differently.
Well, his history is that he tends to win fights that people don't think he's going to win, and lose fights that he should win. And that's been his history. Well, this is certainly a fight that he's the underdog in. And if that holds true to form, what's happened before, he may get himself an upset win. But Andrade's a very good fighter, left-hander, very skilled, and I think it's going to be really a very interesting fight.
Al, before I let you get out of here, I know because you love the history of boxing, and obviously you're a Hall of Fame broadcaster, you've been doing it for so long. Do you remember who called the Frazier Ali fight?
Yes, I just saw. In fact,
you were probably watching it last night with me. Go ahead.
I happened to see it on I was actually back on an airplane from Mexico this past week where I did a fight, and they had TV on they had the satellite TV, and they were showing that it was Don Dunphy calling the fight alone.
Yeah.
And it was, I was listening to it and saying, oh my, Don Dunphy was a big mentor of mine, and became someone that I really respected and loved, and gave me great advice. And so I was thinking to myself, here, one of the classic fights of all time in boxing, of course Don Dunphy should be announcing it.
And then there were a couple other, too, even in the 70s, where you had Frazier, Brown, the Colonel, Bob Sheridan, and David Frost. I mean, how about that for a broadcasting crew? Right?
That's an interesting group, yes.
I'll tell you, they don't make you guys anymore. They don't make you guys like they used to. Al, I know we're pressed for time. Always great to catch up. We'll definitely tune in and watch you guys over the weekend on Showtime. Appreciate a couple moments.
Rich, always a pleasure to be with you. Take care.
You got it. Take care of yourself. Al Bernstein, the Hall of Famer from Showtime.